Once upon a time there lived a woman who never baited her son right from when her son was born. Mutandi never baited him like all the children, whilst the other women in the village prided in the tradition of baiting their newborn babies in front of their huts. Mutan never partook in the tradition after she gave birth to her baby. The people waited for days, but man never came out with a calabash of water like the others. Instead, she kept her baby hidden inside her hut. At first, the villagers whispered. They assumed that man was lazy, whilst others said that she was possessed. Soon, the whispers turned into open mockery. Her child must think like a dead rat. The women laughed as they gossiped and pondered on why man refused to bait her son. The children of the village avoided her hut as their parents warned them not to go close to the child. Still, Mutandi never flinched. She never apologized and never explained to anyone why she decided never to beat her son. At night, when the baby cried, Mutan held him tightly and whispered, "My son, endure for a little while. When the time is right, they will all understand." Her words only deepened the villagers' suspicions. The people called her son an abomination. They warned their children not to play near him. They even advised the village elders to banish Monday before her child brought rain upon them all. But Mutandi, calm and unbothered, kept living her life as though their insults meant nothing. She bought perfumes and burned sweet incense around her hut. Yet she never for once touched her son with water. People began to call her a witch who was using her son for dark powers. Her neighbor Mina even came out to claim that she saw Mutan's son floating in her hut one night. When she came out to ease herself, she claimed that on so many occasions she had seen Mutandi cast out dead birds from her hut. In fact, she called them evil as she pushed for the villagers to banish them from the village. But did everything possible to defend herself, stating that her reason for not baiting her son was not born out of evil intentions, but the people did not listen. They banished them out of the village to live in the middle of the forest where no one dared to tread. Monday gathered her few belongings and strapped her little boy on her back. She walked silently into the thick forest as her heart bled in pain. The villagers jeered as she left, calling her a witch and the mother of an abomination. Mina, her neighbor, stood boldly at the front as she smirked in triumph. She could not wait to finally possess Mutan's land, a land that she had admired for years and wished to have. Mina never saw Mutan's baby float in the air as she had claimed. In fact, she never saw anything suspicious. All she did was capsize on everyone's suspicion to send Mutandi away so as to avail her the opportunity to take over her land. While she jubilated, Monday wept as she walked into the forest, her spirits broken as her feet were heavy with sorrow. Monday built a small in the forest where she decided to raise her son alone away from the cruelty of her own people. She watched as her son Enai grew into a very strong and healthy boy. Although he had never been baited, his skin shone as though the sun itself had kissed it. New was filled with unusual strength. He single-handedly lifted heavy rocks and killed animals with his bare hands. He was his mother's protector in the forest as no harm ever came to them. His mother Mutandi warned him never to set his foot in the village. "This is our home now, and under no condition should you set your foot in the village," she said to Enai, who shook his head and promised never to disobey his mother's commands. However, one morning whilst En was hunting in the forest, he heard a loud scream and decided to follow the sound. He bent his back low and weaved his way through the leaves as he made his way to the sound. A few minutes passed and Enai arrived at the edge of the forest close to the village, where he saw a woman yelling angry at a beautiful young woman who she told to clear out a huge portion of land. Enai stood back and watched as the young woman broke down in tears and began to work. When night came, the young woman returned home, leaving a huge portion untouched. Enai spent the night clearing the land. He saw the tears of the young woman and knew that he had to help. Enai remembered how his mother was humiliated, cast out and made to suffer. So he quietly cleared the land until dawn, his hands working like the wind as his body glistened with strange power. By the time the sun rose, the land looked as though an army had labored through the night. The young woman, whose name was Adak, came back and froze in shock. Her eyes widened as she beheld the perfectly cleared land. She dropped to her knees in tears, thanking the heavens for helping her, for she had prayed the night before that a miracle would save her from shame. When her stepmother arrived and saw the land cleared, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Who helped you?" she asked Adak, who swore that she had no help. From the edge of the forest, I watched silently as Adak's stepmother accused her of lying. Her stepmother's eyes darted around, searching for footprints or signs of help. "You dare mock me, girl? You are too weak to do this alone. Who helped you?" she thundered as Adak shook her head, insisting that she walked all night, but her trembling voice betrayed her fear. From behind the trees, I clenched his fist. He longed to step out and defend her. But his mother's warning rang in his ears. Never set foot in the village. So he remained calm, watching as Adak's stepmother raised a stick to strike her. And stood back and watched as Adak cried out for help. His mother's warning still echoing in his mind as he held himself back, trying not to interfere. But deep within his heart, he knew that one day his silence would no longer be enough. So he continued to lurk in the shadows, ensuring not to make his presence known. Whenever Adak's stepmother gave her impossible tasks, I would return at night to finish them. Adak's prayers of gratitude each morning filled the forest. And although she never saw him, her voice became the comfort of his hidden world. Still, I never revealed himself. His mother's warning held him like chains, but destiny never hides forever. One fateful afternoon, whilst Adak was fetching water from the stream, her stepmother pushed her into the stream and watched her struggle to stay afloat. Chin Adak could not swim, so she left her there knowing that she would not survive. Adak screamed out for help, her hands reaching for the bank of the river, but the current dragged her deeper as she fought for her life. Deep in the forest, I heard her cry and ran as fast as he could, crashing through the trees as he arrived the stream. He found her drowning, then without a second thought, he leapt into the water. The stream swallowed him whole. But as his body touched the water, the prophecy long buried awoke. The entire stream dried up and all the plants withered before his eyes. I was so terrified he dropped Adak by the riverbank and ran back into the forest, his heart pounding as he wondered what he had done. For the first time in his life, I had disobeyed his mother's commands and the world itself seemed to react with terror. When Motan saw him stumble into their huts, trembling, she knew immediately what had happened. And fell to his knees as he began to speak. "Mother, the river dried up the moment I touched it. Even the plants withered. How is this possible, mother?" But they shook her head slowly as she began to speak. "Long ago, a strange woman told me that you carry the power to reveal the true foundations of this village. But for that power to awaken, you would have to meet the one whose tears will water the earth again. Not just any tears, but tears born out of joy and not sorrow." Back at the river, however, the villagers gathered as they stared at the dry river in disbelief, pondering on what could have happened. Some went on their knees crying that the gods are angry with the village. News of it got to Adak's stepmom, who rushed out in fear, terrified that people will find Adak's body inside the river. She arrived the river, but Duket was nowhere to be found. All she met was a dry river which was filled with water moments earlier. Adak's stepmother could not help but tremble in fear. She arrived home moments later and met Aduket sitting by the fire. Her body wet from the incident. Her heart nearly stopped as she approached Aduket to know how she was alive. "You are alive," she said to Adak, who looked at her but said nothing. Adak's stepmother could not help but tremble in fear. She knew the river had swallowed the girl, but yet here she was, alive and well, as if nothing had happened. A cold shiver ran through her spine, and she sensed that something beyond her control had begun to stir. So that night, whilst Adak slept, her stepmother decided to finish what she had started. She crept into Adak's room with a rope in her hand. Her plan was to strangle Adak quietly before morning and lie to the people that Adak slept and died in her sleep. However, as she leaned over Adak's bed, a sudden wind swept through the hut, lifting her from the ground and hitting her head across the floor. Adak's stepmother dropped the rope on the floor, her heart racing as she picked herself up from the ground and ran to her room in terror. By morning, Adak woke up to find the strange rope by her bed. She walked to her stepmother's room and met her still on the bed. Her entire body was paralyzed and her eyes shook with blindness. Adak wondered what could have happened. She stood there confused as her half-sister Bumi walked in and met her mother blind and paralyzed. She screamed so loudly that the whole village gathered. "Look at my mother," she cried, pointing at her mother who laid there stiff on the bed, her eyes wide open but clouded like mist. She was fine yesterday and now she's blind and paralyzed. "This is the work of Adak. She's a witch," Bumi said as whispers rose like the heat of snakes. Some villagers even revealed that they saw Adak leaving the stream when he dried up, her body soaked with water. "She is a witch," they spat as fingers pointed at Adak from every corner of the crowd. "She has bewitched her stepmother, crossed our river and made our rivers to dry." The chants grew louder as a sea of voices rose up against her. Young men picked up sticks eager to prove their loyalty by destroying her. Adak stood frozen, her body trembling, her eyes filled with tears as she cried aloud, "I am innocent. I swear." Adak cried, revealing that all she had done was suffer in silence. But her words only felt the anger of the people. An old man stepped forward in that moment and began to speak. "Did you not hear that she cleared a huge parcel of land overnight? No human can ever do such," he said as he called her a witch. The people roared in agreement. Some shouted for her to be dragged to the village square whilst others clamored for her to be stoned to death. Before her curses spread further than expected as they began to stone Adak by the village square, ignoring her cries and pleas, something strange began to happen. The skies grew dark as though night had swallowed the day. Thunder rumbled across the heavens as a great wind surrounded Adak where she knelt, wailing and trembling. The villagers who moments before raised their sticks and stones stumbled backwards in terror. The wind grew so fierce that no one could step close to her. They stood from a distance and watched as the voice of the chief priest pierced through the storm as he began to speak. "Fools," he shouted angrily. "You have brought this suffering upon yourselves. How dare you stone the innocent and embrace the guilty? Now you tremble at the fruit of your own deeds. The gods are with her, and anyone who dares to harm her will meet an unusual fate." The people fell silent, their bodies shaking as they looked at each other in confusion. The chief priest lifted his hands to the sky as he continued to speak. "This girl you call a witch is the answer to your prayers. Only her joy and happiness will restore this land to its glory until her heart is healed. Your rivers will remain dry. The skies will remain dark and you all will begin to die one after the other," he said to the people who dropped their stones and fell at Adak's feet pleading for mercy. "Forgive us, a special one. We promise to make things right. Please restore our land and do not strike us in your anger," they said to Adak, whose anger refused to win. Her tears fell like rain onto the dust, yet it brought no healing to the land. For though the people knelt before her, she remembered their cruelty, the days they mocked her, the hunger that she endured, her stepmother's wickedness, and the stones that they had just hurled at her. "They call me special now. Yet they spot at me when I was broken. They plead for mercy now. Yet they rejoiced in their suffering. Can gifts or crowns erase his scars that they have burned into my heart?" Adak asked herself as her heart grew angrier. The villagers bowed as they continued to wail. Even the king removed his crown and laid it at her feet. "Take my throne," he said. Sit where I sit. Rule where I rule. Only smile again that the gods may smile on us. But that turned her face away. I do not desire your throne, my king. I do not seek your crown. I can't force my heart to feel joy when all I've known is sadness and pain. Days passed and the people did everything to please her. They clothed her in the finest fabrics, sang her praises, cooked her the sweetest meals, and offered her riches. Yet her eyes remained clouded with sorrow, and the skies remained dark as night. Crops refused to grow. Children cried from hunger and the rivers remained dry as the people all whispered amongst themselves in fear, wondering what will happen if Aduke never smiled again. Aduke's half-sister Bumi, however, could not understand how things had turned so quickly. Her heart burned with envy as she could not believe that the same sister who she had mocked and called worthless was now being treated like a queen. Wherever Adak went, people bowed, bringing her gifts and praises. Even the king himself had surrendered his throne to her. One night, Bumi sat in the corner of her heart, her eyes flashing with anger as she whispered, "Why should Adak be the savior of the land? If she's gone, the people will worship me as her sister. I want to be the one they worship. I want to rule the land and take over the throne," she said as she devised the plan to take Adak down. That evening, as Adak walked down the path that led to the stream, Bumi trailed her from behind. She arrived at the edge of the stream, which was now dry with drought, her voice soft as she began to speak. "Spirits of the forest, you who cleared my farm when I was mocked, you who rescued me from the stream when death called, I thank you today, for without you, I would have perished." Her words floated over the water, innocent and pure. But Bumi's ears twisted them into venom. She quickly rushed the village and returned with some elders who she brought to witness everything with their own eyes. When they arrived, they met Aduke kneeling by the cracked riverbed. Her palms lifted as she whispered some thanks to the one who saved her. Bumi pointed and roared, "You see, she speaks with dark forces. She is evil and should not be allowed to deceive the people." The elders drew closer as they pondered on what to do. One of the elders reminded the others of what the chief priest said about Adak. "If we anger her father, our land will perish," he said as Bumi fumed in anger. "If you all are afraid of her, I'm not. I will take her down and you all will have me to thank for saving our village," she said as she charged towards Adak with a knife. Just as she approached Adak, Enai, who had been lurking in the shadows for all this time, emerged from the forest and stepped between them. "Enough," he said, his voice steady as he began to speak. Bumi fell to the ground confused as she stared at Enai in disbelief. "Who are you?" an elder whispered as Enai introduced himself to them as Motan's son, the child who they cast away so many years ago. Everyone opened their mouth in shock as they tried to understand what Adak had to do with the son of the banished woman. Before Enai could say another word, Bumi accused Adak of conniving with their enemy to destroy the village. As Enai turned back to look at Adak, Bumi launched forward with the knife as she tried to strike him. Her entire body froze as she fell to the ground, unable to move. The people stood there shocked as they watched in complete terror. The skies were still as dark as night, although it was only evening. Enai stood tall, his voice roaring like thunder. "I am the one you cast away. I am Motan's son. The child you mocked. The boy you called an abomination." The crowd gasped and even the elder fell back in fear. Bumi lay frozen on the ground, her knife inches away from Aduke. "I saved twice from the hands of the evil woman who made her cut bushes at night and pushed her into the river. I was the one who cleared the bushes and saved her when her life was almost cut short." Adak looked at him stunned. She could remember him lifting her out of the river, but the memory was so faint that she thought that it was a dream. Adak for the first time smiled from her heart. The skies, which had been dark for weeks, cleared as the sun pierced through the darkness. "It is him," the chief priest said, revealing that only Enai could loosen the sorrow from her heart. It was then that Motandi walked out of the forest and began to speak. She revealed to them that when she was pregnant, an old man approached her with a revelation that changed her life forever. He told her that her child was no ordinary boy and that Monday should never beat her son until he meets the woman whose tears will water the earth again. The man warned that the child would die if Mutandi ever bows to pressure and baits the child, for the evil spirits residing in the waters know that her son will be their undoing. If he ever baits in water, they will claim him and make sure that he does not survive. So Mutandi for all these years clung to the warning like a mother clings to her child. And I opened his eyes wide in shock. He now understood why his mother never baited him and why the rivers dried when he jumped in to save a duck. Their presence in the water killed the evil that resided within, drying up their powers in that instant. As Monday finished speaking, her eyes caught sight of Bumi on the floor. The bracelet in her hand looked so familiar as she asked if it belonged to Mina. Bam shook her head as Mutan froze, unable to believe what was happening. Bumi turned out to be the daughter of the woman whose lies led to their banishment. The same woman who lied to the people that she saw her son floating in her heart. It was the same Mina who almost killed a duck by the stream and planned to strangle her in her sleep. Mutandi could not believe how much damage one woman had done. First to Mutandi and then to educate herself. The king then stepped forward and decreed that Enai and his mother we are now a part of the royal family as demanded by village tradition. According to the traditions of the land, if a king banishes the innocent and later finds that they are innocent, he is forever indebted and must adopt them into the royal family as a form of compensation to their agreed. That was how Enai and his mother became a part of the royal family. Bumi and her mother were banished and Enai got to know a duck better. Their destinies were tied and it wasn't long before they fell deeply in love with each other. The prosperity of the village was now hinged on the happiness of the people who the villagers once despised. So the entire village apologized to them and did things to always make them happy. The happier they were, the more prosperous the village became. Even the king obeyed and honored them, and the people learned their lesson the hard way, never to scorn a person because of their differences. From that day, the people cherished Enai and gathered at joy like a sacred flame. The rivers ran again, crops bowed heavy with grain, and children grew up hearing the tale of how a smile healed a land. Enai and Ad got married beneath clear skies and the village prospered, reminded forever that mercy is stronger than rumor and love more powerful than any curse. I hope you enjoyed the story.